It's based on Eurovision. I did not come up with the idea for Eurovision. I Eurovision is one of my favorite things that humanity has ever done, which I say unironically. People from Europe are always a little concerned that I might be serious about that, but I
What
am.
is Eurovision for the viewer that doesn't know?
Eurovision. All right. So Eurovision is a battle of the bands that takes place in Europe every year. It was begun in 1956 as a way to bring the continent back together after blowing each other apart for the previous 50 years. Um, and so every year, every country in Europe and a few that are not in Europe send a band or a singer to compete. You win nothing except the right to host it next year and pay for it. Uh, but it has become, over that time, this incredible distillation of culture and politics and craziness and camp and seriousness. You can't vote for your own country, either from home or the judges. So you can kind of see the political situation in Europe by what people are voting for. Last year, it was Switzerland that won. And I genuinely think that was a lot of people being like, I'm literally Switzerland. Uh, just they seem very nice. He was a nice young person who won. And so much history has flowed through Eurovision. There's a revolution that like the signal was the singer adjusting his lapel pin to like storm the Capitol steps. So much has happened during Eurovision, and I think it's wonderful. You can watch the goofiest thing you've ever seen in your entire life, followed by a ballad that will rip your heart out, and they are competing for the same prize, which is once again nothing. And I just find that so wonderful and so human that I completely fell in love with it the first time I watched it. And it's such a dumb story of how a book got written, but the magic that the internet once had. I was live tweeting Eurovision in 2016, and a fan of mine in the Philippines tweeted, "You should write a science fiction or fantasy Eurovision. That'd be super cool." And I typed back, "Yep, that'd be fun." And 5 minutes later, I got a DM from an editor at Simon and Schuster saying, "I will buy it right now." And she did. The contract to this day says Eurovision in space, and that's all. There's not even a title on it. I had no idea what I was going to do. I didn't know if I could pull it off. I had never written comedy before. It was very much flying by the seat of my pants, and it was supposed to be a novella, but it also grew in the telling.
Yeah, so how tell us about some of the characters that emerged out of this and some of the fun Decibel Jones and the Absolute Zeros, some of the bands, or some of your favorite.
Oh my God, there had to come that whole, like, "Oh, new band name" thing people say, like, that was my life for so long. I had to come up with so many different band names, and so many different song names, and all just there was so much material to come up with. One of the things I did that helped a lot, and is an Easter egg throughout the book, is that all of the alien words that you don't recognize, the names of the aliens themselves, their species, their planets, their cities, all of that, they're all words in the languages of the countries that have participated in Eurovision. Now, people will often be like, "Oh, I speak Dutch, so I know what Vorpret means," but not get that they are all from those languages, because vanishingly few people speak all 45 languages of the countries that have participated over the years. And then the chapter titles are Eurovision songs of years gone by. But Decibel Jones and the Absolute Zeros, I sat for a week trying to come up with the names of the band members and the band name, the core band name, because that was going to be very important. It had to be cool. I knew I wanted to do Jones, both as a tribute to Bowie and because it's just a universal truth that anything you put with the last name Jones, if it's a noun, it sounds super cool. It really doesn't. Banana Jones sounds great. It sounds awesome. I want to meet that person. But I didn't know what that first word was going to be. So this is the very real truth. I went on Twitter and I asked everyone to tell me their pets' names. And somebody said my cat's name is Decibel. And I went, "Oh my God, it's perfect. Like, couldn't be more perfect. And it's D Jones, David Jones." Um, the others, the absolute zeros is obviously a scientific concept, but I liked the self-deprecating nature of it, which seemed very English to me, and I knew that I was going to have it be a British band, both because I have lived in the UK, so I felt like I could speak to that culture, and because up until very recently, the UK did very poorly at Eurovision. It was kind of a running gag that they got nil point, no points. And I thought it would be funny to have a British band save the universe. Somewhat less funny now, but at least they got to host because of a song called Spaceman, which delighted me completely. Um, and then the Mira Wonderful Star is a real star. And I remember seeing it a lot on my high school boyfriend's like galaxy map on his wall and being like, what a weird thing to name a star. Like, why is it more wonderful than all the other ones? And I'd always wanted to name somebody that somehow. So she got that name. And then I guess it, in some sense, goes to the Brontes. St. John, St. John, like Americans read it as St. John, but it's pronounced St. John. It's the last name of a person in Jane Eyre, and it is a fairly common, older, posh European thing. So I thought it would be funny to have it be a saint, something completely ridiculous. So it's Oort Saint Ultraviolet after the Oort cloud. So I came up with all those names, and then the infinite variety of puns that followed with all of the bands and the song titles. Um, and honestly, it probably took longer to come up with all of those than to write half the book. There are a few lyrics in the book, and I did write those lyrics. God help me. But actually, the song called "Terms of Service," I am genuinely proud of those lyrics. I think I did an okay job. What I found writing the first one was that the dumber I thought the joke I had made, like the more it got laughs. Like there's this whole sequence in the first book where Clippy is the form that the AI species has taken to interface with humans because they looked through human digital history and found a helpful assistant and thought that that would be something that all humans would respond warmly to. And of course, we all respond less than warmly to Clippy generally anyway. And in this case, one of the much more grounded characters just can't deal with a 7 foot tall Clippy in front of them. And that is kind of where his psyche breaks. He's like, no, I completely reject all of this. It's too ridiculous. And I remember writing that and thinking, I either just wrote the dumbest thing I've ever written or like one of the best things I've ever written. And the fact that my house is now full of Clippy paraphernalia that I have been sent says that it seems like it was one of the better things I've written. So I learned to trust being dumb. Being dumb is being fun, and I really learned to trust that no, I can make a dumb joke that just makes me laugh. And weirdly enough, through the alchemy of literature, like those jokes that I thought were just for me often are the ones that come back and people genuinely quote. I find that like for myself and on the page, people have often pointed out there are very long sentences in space opera and space oddity, and it's true. But the long sentences allow me to set something up and then undercut it by the end. And it's a technique I use a lot in space opera and space oddity, um, so that you sort of have several setups, undercut the entire concept of the sentence, and then the punchline will be at the end or indeed in the next sentence. Um, so like I don't know, one that I enjoy and remember from the beginning of Space Oddity is it talks about the Dutch East India Trading Company as an organization as close to pure evil as you're likely to find before the invention of online dating. So to compare online dating as a kind of evil on par with the Dutch East India Company is absurd and wrong. Like the Dutch East India Trading Company is genuinely one of the most evil forces that has ever moved and shook upon this planet. And online dating is regular, mundane evil, but that juxtaposition is what makes it a funny line. Well, I really wish that current events weren't so eager to back me up. But the sequel is about um, what you do when the hero's journey is done and you're not dead, and what indeed an entire culture does when it has gotten through its bottleneck, and how it can maintain a peace after that. A peace is the universe's difficult second album, and the storyline revolves around finding the next sentient species, which is the Vedridi, and they are completely uninterested in being part of any of this galactic thing. They don't experience emotions at all. I sort of asked myself, I don't know why I would think of this with COVID. Can an entire planet have depression? Like, can a whole species just be done with going on, and what would that look like? And then the other side of it is the villain, Mr. Snuggles, who is an inveterate fascist that is in the body of a psychotic Care Bear, and just looks at this really functional system moving and keeping everyone happy and safe all around him and thinks, yeah, I don't want to do that. Let's mess it up. and so proceeds to try to completely destroy this completely functional system. And again, I wish that current events weren't so eager to prove me not really a science fiction writer, but a realist writer. But it seems that they're on the way. If I have an idea for a third book, I would do one. I think I'm out of three-syllable O nouns that make any kind of sense. But if I had another idea, I would keep on with it. I think it brings all the characters to a nice conclusion by the end. So I'm happy with it as it stands, but I would never say never. I had never planned to do a sequel to begin with, so if an idea comes along. So I'm working on a near future gender dystopia called Nobody But Us. Again, I don't know why this would pop into my mind as something to write now. It's a reproductive dystopia, but it borders on reproductive utopia as well. So I'm deep in the weeds on that. I have a pretty long and major piece coming out in a anthology called The End of the World as We Know It, which continues the story of Stephen King's The Stand. So the fact that I got to write in a Stephen King universe just boggles my mind even as the words are coming out of my mouth. I grew up absolutely adoring Stephen King. I live in Maine. Like it was absolutely beyond to be asked to do that. So that is also coming out this year.
And include an REM song as your
Yeah, yeah. And the title of my story is Came the Last Night of Sadness, which is also a rock and roll lyric, as the master likes to do.